thank you guys for all coming out today, Monday morning. So I appreciate it. This story is nuts. We just did a podcast with the guys at Coast Guard Station Oak Island and heard their point of view. And I appreciate you guys telling your story and having you here too. So before we go, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, Ben, and we'll go around the table here.
Ben Wiggins, I former Navy EOD, 24 years. Learned to dive through the Navy in 1987 and had a blessed life. I literally dove all over the world and on the Navy's time. So since then, I've just been contracting, with my background is EOD, explosive ordnance disposal. So it's more centric to, Homeland Security type of, missions and roles. So I've had various jobs with the State Department. Currently working for USCG, which is down in Sumter, South Carolina, as a counter UAS analyst. So, the threat when I first came in the Navy was IEDs on the ground. Now they're airborne. So that's what I've been doing.
Awesome.
Yep.
Sounds like a fun job.
It's okay. It's a little tedious at times. I'm looking forward to, being home more real soon.
Yeah, I hear you. Traveling.
Yeah, it's it's a 3-hour drive. Yeah. I spend the whole week down there pretty much, and then come back on the weekends.
Oh,
yep.
Laura, tell us about you.
I'm Laura. I'm the wife. I have nothing exciting like that to tell, but I love being on the boat, and we live in Hampstead. So.
And you're a diver as well, right?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought you were.
I'm not. No.
But you love the water.
Yep.
Awesome.
So I'm Steve Marshall. I'm the pastor at Grace Community Church of Topsail, where Ben and Laura go. And Ben is also just a really great friend of mine. And we love water. So avid waterman as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we live in a great place.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't want to tell too many people about it.
Yeah.
It's too late.
My name's Stephen Sawyer. I'm a search and rescue mission coordinator for the Coast Guard. I work at the command center here in Wilmington for Sector, North Carolina. One of 3 civilians that work in the command center, and been doing this for 30 years, both active duty and on the civilian side.
And this job, in my opinion, has got to be, any job in the Coast Guard's tough and could be emotional, but you physically or actually hearing the stories come on the radio or the calls, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's, so in my role, it's funny because the boat crews and rescue swimmers get to go out and meet survivors and pull people out of the water. And they also have to deal with, the not so pleasant times when you're pulling bodies out. But for command center people, we normally don't have that interaction. Mm-hmm. This case was actually the first survivors that I have met, and all my years of doing this, 30 years of doing it, I have never had a group of rescued people come to the command center and engage us like this case did. So it was kind of special to me. Ben and I have kind of become friends over this case, and it's just was a chance.
Went to his Christmas party last year.
Nice.
That's a bona fide friend right there.
Yeah. Another thing too, it's a question I've had, and I want to make sure that I'm right. The Coast Guard sector Wilmington covers the whole state, correct?
That's correct. We're the command and control unit for all of the small boat stations and the aids to navigation teams.
So what in North Carolina, what do you think's the number one case that you guys deal with the most? I'm curious, is diving got to be in the top 3 issues that you deal with? Because it's a very popular hobby here in North Carolina, some of the best diving arguably in the world,
In the last 2 years, we have had 8 dive accident cases. That doesn't include medevacs that we've done from dive boats and those type things. So those get categorized different. I didn't look those up, but I did take a look yesterday. And knowing that I was coming here, and we had 8 dive accidents. Most recently, we had one year to the day of Ben's situation. So
that's and unfortunately, right now down in Florida, there's a missing diver too. So I get a lot of people sending me messages and just asking, "Hey, can you just public service announcement, maybe just, take a picture of the coordinates, whoever's out there chartering today, just keep an eye out. But no, it happens a lot. I'm a big diver. I'm scuba certified, but I got into free diving. That's all I do here. I love it. And I was out that day when this happened. I remember hearing it it was coming in glitchy, but when I got back to land, my phone was blowing up. They're like, "Hey, was that you guys? Are you all right?" And I'm like, "No, we're good. We're home." So, but yeah. So before we get too into detail, I just want to let everybody know, like, the ultimate goal is kind of maybe tell people, especially people that are getting into diving, what we can do to prevent this from your experience. And also on the Coast Guard side too, like what you guys recommend, divers do in this situation if it ever were to happen to you. So that's the ultimate goal at the end of the day here is to kind of, spread the word. So yeah, tell us about the day, just how everything went and what the weather was, all that stuff.
As Laura said, the captain of the boat is a friend of mine, grew up with him in Raleigh, North Carolina. And he had been after me, calling me, I reconnected with him about 2.5 years ago. Almost 3 now, really. And went down to his place down near Sandy Creek off of 74. He's got a farm down there. So he said, "Hey, Ben, let's, we go diving, man. We got a spot." So finally, I acquiesced, and I look at Laura because I have to tell you, there's a saying, there's a verse in the Bible that says, "Pride goeth before a fall." Well, I had decided I was going to reward myself with a day of diving on Sunday, which is normally not the day I would do anything but go, Grace Community.
Yeah.
And my friend and I, Jose had just put in 2 brand new water heaters, and I worked all day in the heat. It was mid-August. I thought, hey, I'm going to go diving. It's a perfect time. The weather's perfect. So, called Willie up and I said, "Hey, when are you going diving again?" "Well, we're going Sunday. Come on and go." So anyway, we hooked up. He said, "We'll be down here, by 7-ish so we can get out," because we got a 2-hour ride to the dive site. So 13th of August, 2023, I headed down there, got there. There was already, most of the gear, if not all of it, was already loaded up because they go a lot to the spot. And I don't know that there's too many people, if anybody, that knows about the spot. And I'm not going to give you the coordinates because I don't even know them. But there's a ledge. But the site is 53 miles off the coast of Holden Beach Inlet.
That's what I was going to say. What port did you guys head out? Out of Holden Beach?
We went out of Holden Beach, the inlet out of Holden Beach, and motored out there. It was 1 to 2, roughly, and not bad. But we were going into the swell, as you typically are going out.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't a bad ride, I didn't think. And for some reason, I decided to take a few pictures, which came in really handy later on. But it was a beautiful day. There were no clouds.
I remember, yeah.
Water temperature was around 85 degrees. Visibility, of course, at that distance from the shore was really good. So we head out. We get there on station. My dive buddy threw a buoy over the side with a float on it, which will come in crucial. Will be a crucial point I'll bring out later.
Yeah.
So I got to say this. I noticed. So I'm a former Navy diver.
Yeah.
I was trained a certain way. You have a plan, and this is important for those who are getting into the diving sport, the hobby. If you have a plan, whether you've done it 1 time or 100 times, talk about that plan. Talk about what you're going to do. Talk about emergency procedures. If you have any, or if you have a diving casualty, how are you going to activate the rescue? How are you going to get in touch with a facility that has a recompression chamber?
Yeah.
Where is a recompression chamber? Where's the closest one? Those things are, beat into my head during my Navy career. None of that was talked about.
Yeah.
It was basically, let's go, let's get in the water.
And that's the excitement people get, especially kids. Oh, it's a beautiful, flat, calm day.
Yeah.
Let's rock and roll. Let's get out there quick. Yeah. And
and I'll take the hit for this. I should have said, hey, let's slow down. Let's, the water's not going anywhere. The ocean's going to be here. Let's take our time. And so the first set went in, not mentioning any names, the first 2 divers went in. And so it was my buddy and I getting dressed out.
Yeah.
Everybody was wearing long wetsuits. I was wearing a shorty. And I probably will never do that again, even though the water temperature was closer to 90 than it was 80. So I hit the water about 10 o'clock in the morning, right around 10. And all of us had, triple band spear guns, catch bags, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So my dive buddy and I get in the water. I didn't really notice a current at the moment, we splashed, but I did notice that the boat was here and then the buoy was in front of the boat. So we swam around the stern and tried to swim towards it. And I noticed we're not getting that. We're not closing the distance.
Yeah.
So we just dropped down. So let's just drop down. And it's usually surface currents are different than bottom currents.
Yeah.
You dive. So I thought, we'll get down. I took a little bearing on my little compass thing. Like, we'll just swim in that direction when we get down. We got down, the current had pulled us even further.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in 90 feet of water. By the time we got to the bottom, all I saw was like this table, flat, no ledge. We're looking for this ledge. And looked around. My bottom time from the left surface to reach surface time was just over 8 minutes. That's how short that dive was. So,
why so short? Were you just panicking because you're like, we're not on the ledge?
We weren't where we were. And so I looked at him. We're literally standing on the bottom. I looked around. I'm like, the Navy signal is 4 to surface. So we went back up to the surface and thought we'd just, regroup and go towards the buoy again and get on site, get closer to where we wanted to be. We had drifted. We come up and we're 150 yards from the boat and moving away from the boat. And I'll tell you this, and a good friend of mine told me this. He said, Ben, you're going to have linear moments of memory that you're not going to remember certain things and you're going to remember others. It didn't start then, but it started pretty soon after that. I looked and I thought, well, we're going to need to, hook up with the other guys or something. Well, they'd already been in the water probably 20 minutes maybe before we even splashed, maybe 15, 20. So at that depth, what the time and depth for schedule is, you don't have a lot of time. And we were breathing a N2O2 nitrous.
Yep.
We were on a mix, So it became, never panic. There was never any, like, oh my gosh, we're getting further from the boat yet. Well, the other two guys surfaced, and at some point after my buddy and I were on the surface, and we waved to them, but they were further away from the boat than we were. So I can tell you that the boat position we were off the starboard aft quarter the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're at the helm, which is head of flying bridge, you're not looking behind you normally unless you're doing this. Well, keep in mind now, there's no other adults on the boat than the captain. There's 2 other, small children that were on the boat. So we hooked up with the other 2 guys and we got together and we said, hey, let's go, man. We got to move out. We're drifting away from this boat. And that was just the mindset. We weren't making any ground. The Navy has a regulation in diving where you will not dive in 1 knot of current or stronger. We didn't know it at the time. We were in almost 2.2 knots of current.
Yeah.
We were moving.
It boogies here.
Yeah. And so at some point, and I'm going to, hit the wave tops of this, as we say in the briefs. I said, all right, guys, we're not getting any closer. And first thing we need to do is start dropping gear. We need to drop our weight belts because you're not going to swim against any current, much less a current of that strength with any kind of gear on. So start dropping gear. At some point, I said, listen, we got 4 spear guns. We don't need 4 spear guns in the water while we're trying to swim. And I'm talking, this was much later. The boat's now 300 yards.
That's what I was going to ask. How far are you from the boat?
The boat's at least 300 yards now. So we made a decision. 2 of the younger, members of our party were going to make an all-out last-ditch effort to go to the boat. So we took their spear guns. They hadn't dropped their tanks yet. They took off, and they got about maybe 60 feet from us. But I think the distance was that we were drifting away from them, not them getting closer to the boat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, come back. So I said, all right, guys, we're in full survival mode now. We need to go as though, he doesn't see us. I will say overall the mood was pretty positive. There was some worry, as it typically would be, especially for the younger people. Anyway, I can't go into the details because I could cross a threshold and release some medical stuff about a person, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So, but there was a lot of worry about the previous, episode having to do with a medical procedure. So I said, look, no more negative comments, and pray without ceasing we're going to be rescued, because we will be rescued. And that's it, okay? And we're going to drop 2 spear guns because we don't need 4 spear guns.
No.
Keep 2 to defend ourselves against something that may charge us if that happens. Well, if that happened around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the youngest member of our party had kind of broken away from the group of us of 3. Shark went right past him. I heard it swish through the water. I barely saw the fin, and he got pulled back in. So before we dropped those 2 spear guns, I said, let's cut the line off of it, and we're going to use that to tie ourselves together. Because if we're out here in the dark, we need to be tied together, because at that point, they're going to be using FLIR to find us. I knew that much. And they'll see a better group of bodies and heat in the water than they would 4 guys, just kind of in the. And listen, like you said, we talked earlier, there was no moon. There was no ambient light from shore. We're probably 60 miles at least more off the coast. Steve can speak to that point.
Yeah.
When they finally found us.
When you realized that you were kind of maybe, and I'm not panic mode, but all right, survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
What I read about it is that you were basically calmed everybody down and said, hey, look, listen, keep your cool.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to make it, like you said.
Yeah.
But at what point how far away from the boat when you realized that? Were you said about 300 yards, or would you guys keep going further and further?
Like
where you couldn't even see the boat anymore?
We were not that far, but, so we're looking west. The boat's,
yeah,
we're looking towards the west, and the sun, was just killing us. But this, the waves picked up a little bit, and I remember losing sight of the boat. And I'm like, hey, who's got the boat? Who's got the boat? And we all took turns like trying to find the boat. Like 1 minute it was over here at like 12 o'clock. Next minute it's over here at 9 o'clock. So, as you drift in the water, you're gonna spin or whatever. But that's at that point, I'm like, there's no way he's going to see us. I mean, we had our dive needles out waving him in the air before we got anywhere near that distance. We were doing those. Somebody had a good idea. Like next time, if you're diving and you find yourself in that situation, make an H with them so you can get instead of just 2 vertical ones, make like a goalpost. I'm like, that's a great idea. I wish I'd have known to do it then.
We did this once. It was during the spearfishing tournament. We were free diving,
mm-hmm.
and free diving's different though. You're only down for maybe a minute, and then you're back up. So your captain kind of knows where you are. But it was really rough. It got nasty when we were out in the Gulf Stream. And Captain made a good point. You ever see those balloons that they use for like kite fishing and all that? He put one of them up right on a marker buoy where we were.
Good idea.
Yeah. So he knew where we were the whole time. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah. So did you ever notice, was the boat just, did you see him going back and forth trying to find you guys? Or?
We did. We saw, what looked like he came back this way, and I'm going to go back and, we'll retract some, or not retract, but we'll go back to the earlier part of the story.
Uh-huh.
As the boat was, getting further away, we did see it kind of turn towards us and then go in linear, movement back and forth. I'm like, oh, I think he sees us. And I really thought at one point he was coming towards us. And I thought, oh, good, he sees us. And then he turned and went back the other way again. I'm like, oh, no. And
that feeling's
but I never, it is a bad feeling. I'll tell you the worst feeling, but I'll get to that in a minute. But I just never really lost hope. I'm like, okay, we're out here. And I remember I kept thinking at some point, like, all right, how in the world did I get out here in the middle of the ocean and I'm not in that boat now? And anyway, later on we saw 2 sport fishing boats go by, but there was no way they could see us. Literally like Carter said, at the Coast Guard Station Oak Island, he said, just literally like looking for a watermelon in the ocean.
That's right. Yeah.
But, the hardest part was when the sun got lower to the horizon. Just before that happened, we saw the 60. So at some point the call went, but it didn't go as soon as it could have. And the reason was, two of us in the dive party had the Garmin watches, and they put a dive icon flag on the screen so the captain can see. Well, he thought we were under the boat the whole time.
Gotcha.
I don't know if you got that's part of the story.
It reads like in a cone shape under the boat. Yep. So as soon as the watch left the cone, it quit reading its position.
Yeah.
So now he thinks they're there.
And
there's a dot there.
Yeah, that's a flaw of that system, I think.
Yeah, but that's what they're designed to do. To mark spots. They're not there to follow you.
Right.
They make something that's incredible now that I use. I'm sure you've heard of them, the InReach. It's like a sat phone.
Yeah.
They make a dive case for it now.
Okay.
So you can put it on your belt. I put it on my belt, and you just got to keep it charged.
Mm-hmm.
But we did hear that part, and I'm glad you clarified that, because I wasn't too sure how that all worked out and why that got caused confusion.
Yeah. I don't have any. My whole thing is we were rescued because a lot of behind the scenes events took place before even probably the first helicopter launched. And that all came out later. All the stuff that came out that you can hear about, if we get to that part of the story and you want to hear about it, is the things that happened that, we had no idea. And even after we got picked up, and it wasn't until I met Steve Sawyer, I found out, and Steve Marshall too.
When did you say, about what time did you start to see any help, like the Coast Guard?
It was, so I don't remember exactly the time. Like I said, I lose some of my memory. Goes blank. But it was later in the afternoon. I want to say probably because sunset that night was just after 8 p.m. Right?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
I want to say right around 3:45, 4 o'clock.
So
but we've been in the water since 10 in the morning. The other guys in the water since before that. 9:30 something.
Did you see a boat or a helicopter?
Helicopter.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when I talked to the guys over at Oak Island and Chief Adkisson and all them, I mean, the one thing, and I want people that are listening to realize, don't be tempted to make that call. I mean, a lot of people hesitate to do that because they feel like they've got it under control and all this stuff. But after talking to them, the Coast Guard, they're saying, man, we'd rather have you guys call and turn around and come back. There's no big deal with that. Don't ever feel pressured.
Yeah. The timeliness in a call really is probably the first crucial thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a diver and you're looking at your watch, and my guys went in the water at 10 o'clock, they should be on the surface at 31 past.
Yeah.
In that depth. And, I never got to the ledge, so I'm not sure what the actual depth there is. I think it's between 80 and 90. But like I said, that's the crucial thing. The call has to go out. If your guys aren't on the water, on the surface of the water, after a minute within the surface time, and you look around and you don't see them, you do a 360, then you go, okay, call's going out. I mean, you just got to do it. And then if they pop up on the surface, then you go, hey, stand down, we're good, we got it.
Yep. What time did you get the call?
We got the call at 2:30 in the afternoon, and there was so they initially were in Sector Charleston's AOR because they're in their area of responsibility because they were below the state line where they went in.
Yeah.
But it became evident really quick that the direction of drift was going to come up to North Carolina waters. So Sector North Carolina, we assumed SAR mission coordination duties for that case early on. And then whenever we get a last known position, there's the two things is position accuracy and time. And the time wasn't, keep in mind they're 50 miles offshore.
Mm-hmm.
Our VHF radios go out to 20 nautical miles. So we were a little lucky that we got any communications out there through them. But piecing together the communications deficiencies and trying to figure out what was going on, it was unclear if they went in the water at noon and were supposed to come up an hour later, or were they supposed to come up now? So adding that time error to the position, knowing that we didn't know.
You had no idea.
Really helped, because when Ben tells the story of the helicopter flying to the south of him, It's because we thought that they would have been on the surface at about 12:30. And so now I'm 2 hours behind.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And they had drifted to the north. And so he was watching the helicopter fly to the south of him. And the one thing, when the helicopter located the boat and the dive buoy were 3 miles apart.
Yeah.
And that helped me think, we don't know if they went in where the buoy is and the boat drifted, or did they go in where the boat is and now I know that I don't know something. So we blew up the error ring around that position to 3 miles instead of standard 1 mile. And that increased our search area size. So now we have a huge search area, but we want to keep him in the, within that ring.
How far off do you think were you guys? I mean, from land, if you were to
everywhere from, it depends where you pulled it from, because as they were in 53 miles off of South Carolina, but because of Cape Fear sticking out, Bald Head Island, and
did you make it all the way up to the shoals, or I think you guys were past the shoals when
they were further out.
That's right.
The direction of drift went north, and then it bent to the east. Yep.
That's what
they got caught in that, and it was nice that we had the Garmin watch data, because he was setting breadcrumbs on his watch. So after the case, we could analyze it and see what actually happened. Yeah. Here's what really happened.
That's awesome to think that you can go back and study this case for future reference too. I mean, so they were pinging, like you said, breadcrumbs all the way to where it almost.
So I got to see what time and where they were and how far away. Like when Oak Island got on scene in their small boat, and we lost communications with the small boat.
That's right. I heard that. Yeah.
So until we could get an aircraft on scene to relay for him, but he was able to figure out, like, hey, they're drifting that way and they're drifting fast. And he was very close. Probably had we not had to bring that boat in for fuel, he was within 4 miles of them, and his
heading was right.
Heading was right where they had been. Like, it was almost like he had followed it up. The coxswain did a fantastic job on that case.
And shout out to Carter. I mean, he's amazing.
Guys,
the way he described it, he's like, I had to make that last minute decision, or a quick decision, to say, now that we know where we are based on the currents and possibly in the Gulf Stream now, that I got to make that, 40, maybe 90, even 90 degree change to where I'm going. And I think that's what he did. Who were you in communication with before? Because I mean, you weren't picking up the captain of the boat they were on. Who were
we were able to talk to them.
Okay.
Sometimes we have an advertised 20 nautical mile offshore VHF capability. Sometimes you get lucky and you get beyond that. That 20 mile specifications is for a 1 watt handheld at 2 meters. So
which is crazy. I see that.
So when you get beyond that point, if boaters really should have another form of communication, whether it be a personal locating beacon, EPIRBs,
these sat phones now.
Sat phones. But you have to know that your nobody knows once you're beyond that 20 miles. And we just got lucky that day that we were able to communicate with him.
So most of your job that day was communication. Were you assisting at all on the position or the heading that they want to head towards?
So the way the command center is set up is there's an overall SAR mission coordinator. And that was my duty that day.
Okay.
We have an operations unit coordinator who calculates drift speed. He does all the computer program work on there. And that person's also responsible for dispatching units. And then a SAR mission coordinator works with all the various units, as well as next of kin conversations, keeping them abreast of what we have going on when we're searching. So, so you're getting into, let's go back to a timeline now. So it's around, what did you say, around 3:30, and you saw the first boat, the Coast Guard boat, correct? Helicopter. That's right. Yep. I'm sorry. Then you had to feel some sort of relief, but
yes,
But apparently you were in the water for how long?
10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, almost 10 hours at that point.
No, but like before you were even found though.
Oh,
It was like 16 hours.
yes. Almost
16 hours.
15 and some change. Almost between, I don't know exactly how long the other guys were in the water, but I put it right around 16 hours, which is, survivable, obviously. But I wanted to say that the search model that he used, I don't know can you say the name of it? The particles, the drift
It's called SAR-OPS. It's a search and rescue optimal planning system that simulates. So you enter a position in the water and it uses Monte Carlo math. It drops 2,000. We can do extensive and drop 10,000 particles of probabilities that expand.
That's really
and
cool.
It simulates drift, and then it gives you okay, here's your highest probability area to search, and then we'll plan a search pattern that covers as many of those probability spots as we can, and
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's how the computer math part of it works, and how we design where we should be searching. And
that's awesome. That's like a really cool tool. I would love to check it out. That's
really cool.
Is this on the vessel as well, or only?
It's only in the command center.
Okay.
So the command center has to draw the search patterns that it wants the pilots to fly, and the search patterns for the small boats. And so the people who man the command center are operations specialists. That's their rating, and they work in the command center and specialize in that.
That's a cool tool. I would love to go check that out.
Yeah, you'll love it.
It's
a techie world, man. Because
and it's only getting better.
They have this huge curved screens, that are like 3 feet long, and you can see every boat that has what's the ILS system? AIS system.
Yeah.
You can see every boat on the water, and there's a lot of boats.
That's what I've got too on mine. And the technology is only going to get better where it comes to a point where it's like, okay, guys, if you want to get into these kind of hobbies, there's really no excuse. I mean, it's an expensive sport, not just diving, but I mean, fishing, but being on the water in general.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
So,
but to your point, though, the helicopter showed up, and we were watching. We were very, enthusiastically, anticipating their rescue at that point, to just be a matter of him coming to us. And I kept watching. I'm like, oh no, he's not coming towards us. And I said that kind of low. They were flying 4-mile legs coming back. And then at every turn, they weren't coming towards us. They were going towards
and south.
Away from
and south.
Yeah.
Huh.
And I didn't even really want to say it out loud, but we all kind of realized it, I think, at the same time. And but the gut punch came when they just, I guess they had to fuel, so they left. And then the sun's the big orange ball, beautiful, and then it's on the horizon, and then it's going below the horizon, and then it's gone. And like I said earlier, I didn't ever think or say out loud we weren't going to be rescued. I kept saying I said it 3 times every time, we're going to be rescued, we're going to be rescued. And they were too. I mean, but when it started to get dark, I was cramping. My dive buddy was pulling my fin to straighten my leg out. My hands were cramping. My arms were cramping. I couldn't get out of this like floating fetal position sometimes, and I was just fighting it. And I just prayed. I said, God, I need you right now because I can't do this.
Mm-hmm. Did you start to get cold too? I heard that.
They asked me when they called me from NBC, they said, when did you first feel hypothermic? I said, when I couldn't stop chattering. My teeth were just like the little teeth you set on the table. Mm-hmm. And I said, God, I need to stop this because I'm not going to make it if this happens. I had these personal conversations. And it's like, just breathe deep, slow your breathing down. And so I did that, and I stopped shivering. I mean, I really stopped shivering. And I didn't shiver again till probably we were on the boat coming back in, the motor whale boat, a rescue boat. And it was just cool because, I was just laying on that non-skid deck, just thanking God that we're looking at the stars on a boat, not, in the water anymore. But, I think at some point I might even have dozed off a little bit, but, so when the sun set, when it started to get dark, I said, okay, guys, we got to get in tight. So we got in tight, and the line was tied. Probably wasn't through every D-ring on our BCs, but, we had dropped gear. At this point, when it got dark, I said, okay, get rid of the other 2 spear guns, because if one drop of blood goes in the water, we're done.
Mm-hmm.
So get rid of them. And then they went to the bottom. There's a lot of gear out there on the bottom. Somewhere between, where we first started dropping gear, weight belts. Unfortunately, I lost a rechargeable dive light when I dropped my weight belt. Thank God my dive buddy had his. It also had a SOS capability. And so you hit the button twice and it blinks SOS. But, like I said, it was the middle of the Perseid meteor shower. The ocean had picked up a little bit. When the sun set, the water temperature, the surface temperature dropped a little bit, I think, because it felt a little cooler. And normally it does anyway, right?
Yeah.
And the winds picked up. The sea state started to build. I think when they finally picked us up, it was 3 to 4, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're in there,
makes it even harder to find you.
I had my buddy hold on to my arm so tight, I had to lean over one time and say, let go of my arm a little bit. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, it's okay, man. Just don't let go. Hold on loosely, like the song, but don't let go. And, but a couple times we got rolled, like a rogue wave, not rogue wave, but a swell came over and just completely washed over, salt water in every hole in your face. And of course now, we've been on the water for a good 11, or more hours and nothing to drink. And so we're, starting to get really dehydrated. We all were, but then the meteor shower showed up, at some point. And like I said, linear memory, it was probably, midnight, 11 o'clock or so. I don't know when we started seeing that. But I got to say this. I heard an airplane. I heard a buddy of mine used to fly, had a Cessna had a 172. I heard an airplane. Unless I was hallucinating. I never saw any lights, but I knew I heard that at some point. I said, hey, did you guys hear that? I heard an engine. I think I heard it. Yeah, I think I did. It was just, the confusion was not out of control, but it was starting, a little bit. And I'll speak for myself. At this point, the phosphorescence in the water was just amazing. Like I said, it's like God was saying, hey, while you're waiting to be rescued, check out this light show I'm providing for you guys. And it was amazing. I've never seen, I think I stopped counting around 30 or so shooting stars. I've never seen that many ever. All the ones I've seen in my life from, first noticeable ones till now, I've never seen that many. But anyway,
do you think that helped your guys' mind just to kind of, take a step back and just, a lot of people from the stories I've been hearing go into panic mode and kind of almost give up, they think about it too much.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I know for me it did. For me, it was very calming. And like I said earlier, Aaron, I never gave up the fact that we were going to be rescued. I knew we were. I just didn't know when. I knew we were going to be rescued. And it was very calming, to see the shooting stars. It wasn't like you see one and then 20 minutes later you see another. It was like every
it's
like 30, 45 seconds.
Drew and I have stayed out at the Frying Pan Tower when they shut the lights off at night. It's unbelievable.
Have you?
Yeah.
Very cool. Speaking of which, before the sunset, we drifted past Frying Pan Tower.
Oh, so you did see the tower?
We did see the tower. And as a matter of fact, I got a piece of artwork to commemorate it. But, excuse me, it was probably, I'd say between 4 and 5 o'clock, maybe later.
The tower saved a few divers before in the past.
I tell you. So my dive buddy goes, man, let's see if we can swim toward it. I'm like, well, we're drifting this way, so let's go that way. And if we kick, maybe we can just eventually, So it was right about the 1 o'clock position when we saw it. couple hours later, it was way over here.
Mhm.
We were way past it. What's it, 30 miles out?
It's about 30 yes. From here, right? It's 180 south, like 46.
They said based on, our height in the water, Steve said that based, your ability to see a head level in the water, you can see about, 8 miles to the sea.
That sounds right.
I
Yeah.
think you
Visible
were
horizon about 8 miles.
Yeah, yep. Because we always say, "Oh, there's a tower." We look about how far we are. It's 8 miles. Yeah, the towers saved a couple divers before. I'm sure you've heard it on the radio. You guys communicate with Richard every once in a while out there. I know there was a diver that drifted into it and climbed up.
Good for him.
Yeah, and luckily, it's kind of a crazy story. Richard wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
But he said he just so happened to leave it open that night.
Oh.
And they got on the radio inside. And
Does he leave it open now?
So now he's actually got a survival box about like underneath the belly there.
Oh, really?
With the handheld and like a whole survival box.
I'd like to meet him and thank him for that, just for the possibility of somebody else ever needing it.
Oh, he's a really good guy. And not only that, the tower is a great tool that I don't think we use enough of. And I hope we can help restore it and save it because, I mean, if somebody's out there, you're picking up the signal or whatever it may be, But yeah, no, do you usually hear from him, right? Every once in a while, or?
Yeah, matter of fact, he came to talk to us one time to offer us anything if we needed a communications platform out there, and that type of thing. But we used to have a tower off of Diamond Shoals. And back when before we formed Sector North Carolina, I was at Group Cape Hatteras, and that was my duty station there. And that tower saved a lot of people. There was a lot of everything from disabled boats that tied up to it.
It's nasty.
People
up there too.
swimming and swimming for it. And
what is? Do you guys ever think maybe one day we could put something out there to maybe help relay a communication quicker, or do you think it would even make a difference?
That's the conversation going on now with what we could do, what we're able to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would be awesome. I mean, I've been out there, or I've worked with CETO, and I've told you we're here, and we hear these on the radio. Well, I don't hear the call from the captain, but I hear him, and that's where it gets eerie, or whoever's in sector. And but it's not a good feeling when you know who's out there that day.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, oh man, I'm texting everybody. Did you make it back?
Yeah.
So where you left off though, you said you were hearing a plane. Or was it an actual plane that you saw? I mean, were you kind of hallucinating yet, or?
That's part of the story that I probably can't really get too much into.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because it's protected.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, there was a plane.
Okay.
That's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's what started the whole thing going forward. I don't know. And I really don't think it's important because. But I did hear that. I know I did.
Yeah.
And it was confirmed through somebody I know. He said, yeah, there was one out there.
How was everybody with you handling it? I mean, was everybody cool? It sounds like you guys were all tied up.
Yeah. I mean,
was there anybody that you were worried about?
The only one, the youngest member of our dive party swam, away from us and didn't stay close. But the shark sighting corrected that. And then it was like, get over here. But, hey.
That would be my concern.
I'm just so glad it didn't. He had a full wetsuit on. So if it had brushed him, shark skin, rip skin right off of you, if it hits you hard enough. So that didn't happen. I mean, so much. We were so protected out there. So I told these guys, and they will remember because they told me they do. Pray without ceasing, will be rescued. So I prayed that like this microphone is the column of water and we're on the top. I prayed that we had protection all the way to the bottom of the ocean as we floated in this mobile cylinder, and we were. I mean, nothing. I mean, other than dehydration and severe sunburn, we came out of this thing, unscathed.
Wow.
But, if you want to continue the story,
let's keep it going.
Yeah, I'll go. So, it's late. I know I dozed off for probably at least 30 seconds. I think each of us did at some point, because we're getting rocked to sleep out there,
Yeah.
But we're literally like one great big human pretzel. And I think one of the guys in our group, I can say names, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Dan's, I think, spotted the tail light on the 130 or heard it. He goes, "Hey, you guys see a plane?" I had water in my ears. I'm like, hang on a second, I'm deaf in one ear and can't hear out of the other from all the stuff I did in the Navy.
It's also loud with the waves.
Oh, yeah.
Clapping like.
Yeah, slapping and clapping. Yep. And I'm like, yeah, I hear it. You hear it? Yeah, I hear it. There's a light. And we saw the starboard wing light and the port wing light, the green and red light. And it's coming. Okay, guys, get the lights out, And these lights that all you have to do is touch the skin of it, I think, and they come on.
Mm-hmm.
And that was happening throughout the whole episode of nighttime. And I think at some point, some of the guys were like asleep because I said, "Hey, the light's on, turn it off." Because I didn't want to present a silhouette, if something swimming below, you can see this silhouette of something on the surface. Let's check it out. So it was a constant thing to keep the lights off. But now we're like, get them on, get them on. So we got the light. And I'm on the outside. I got, Luke here, Evan, and Dan. And I grab the light and hold it up. And we are all doing it. And they fly by. We see the C-130 go, way past us. In the conversation, "Did you see us? Do you think you saw us?" I'm like, if they've got FLIR, they saw us. And so, keep in mind, like I said, we're drifting, but we're rotating as we drift, So, like the Milky Way, oh my gosh.
It's unbelievable.
The trillions and trillions of stars at this point, this far off coast, The Milky Way was here, then all of a sudden the Milky Way is over there, So we were definitely rotating as we drifted. And so I lost sight of the 130, but then it's way behind us. And then it comes around again. And this time it comes and it drops down. And it drops down so low. I'm like, he's going to land on the water. And I'm not kidding you. I found this out from talking to Steve. So the pilot said, too, they have a hard deck of 500 feet. They can't violate that unless they call in and say, "Hey, we're dropping below the hard deck."
Okay.
So they dropped down to, I think, 100 feet off the water.
Oh, wow.
So the wingspan on a C-130 is about 100 feet, isn't it? Close to it? 80 feet or something like
Not
that?
sure, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
pretty
probably-
big.
So it's like it's landing in the water. Well, keep in mind, like I said, it's so dark you can't see anything but, stars and stars. Our pupils were probably that big. The ramp comes down on the back of the 130 as they're coming up on us. And he slowed his airspeed. I mean, like you could tell. All of a sudden, you see this little drogue chute come out. He throws a 58 flare. It lights, saltwater activated. I'm like,
Wow.
praise God, boys, we're going home.
Yeah.
They know we're here. So he flew around again. They came back and they dropped another raft, but they dropped it on the other side of the, like this is the center.
Okay.
We're here. And that's where the flare is. They dropped a raft, but they dropped it on the other side of the flare. And it didn't inflate. They somehow knew it wasn't inflating. So they came around again. They staged another one. And the crew, I forgot her name, God bless her. They came around again and they closed the distance to us in between the flare and us. And then they dropped it. And I saw the drogue come out again. And then out comes, which was the raft. It hit the water. It smacked the water so loud, like I said, I thought we were going to get splashed in the face. And it started inflating and it was like, you could hear it. But,
Wow.
I was thinking at that point, I remember, let's go. And so we swam to it and got in it. And I thought, oh man, I wonder if Laura knows we're being rescued right now. I will say this. I wasn't freaking out, but I was freaking out. Like she must be out of her mind. But I said, God, just please, calm it down. I didn't even really have to pray that prayer. She was already, she held it so together back at the house and with all the calls she was getting. I mean, she needs to tell you that story because that's a huge part of it too.
Yeah.
But that feeling of getting in that boat out of that ocean from all the perils below was the most incredible feeling. I can't tell you. It's just, it's hard to describe. People say, "What's it like being out there?" I'm like, I can't really tell you because it's just, you can't do it unless you do it. You can't know unless you do it. And trust me, you don't want to do it. But the packets of water, there's MRE packets of water in the raft. So we were just tearing them open, just pouring them on our face because our faces were literally like
on fire.
on fire.
Yeah.
Mine was big time. and drinking it. And it's like, oh, water never tasted so good in my whole life, ever.
Sounds like they dropped it right on the money too.
Oh, they did that. I tell you, I told her when I finally met her at the reunion at the airport about a month later, I said, you should take up golf, because if you can put a golf ball that close to the flag, you'd be on the LPGA tour. But yeah, that was incredible. That whole crew, man, it's the whole effort behind this.
Everything.
Was so monumental.
I love how it's such a strong team effort.
Yeah.
You know, all the way from sector to the Coast Guard Station Oak Island, to the guys on the plane, to the guys on the boat.
Yeah.
All the communication.
And the Navy.
The Navy.
Oh, the Navy was
So what happened, we had brought in the small boat to refuel and swap crews.
Yes, Carter told me that. Yep.
So they're 2 hours away from where the C-130 located them, but the USS Porter was offshore.
And those are the guys that picked you up.
And
They were doing an exercise off of Hatteras.
so the C-130 told them, hey, here's where our divers are. And they went over there and
That was amazing.
And they lifted you right up. How'd they get you on? I'm just always curious in these situations.
This is really cool. This is one of the coolest parts of the story. The captain, when we got on the USS Porter, he was there, and the XO were at the ladder that we came up. He said, we got the call. You guys are in the water, and we were in exercise. He goes, I said, let's go. We put the pedal to the metal, and they just, this is a warship.
Yeah.
And I remember when it came up. So we're in the raft. If you've watched the video on the different news outlets, you can see us, drifting, bobbing. And a lot of people thought, well, if they were in a raft, they're fine. They're okay. No, we didn't get the raft until 15, 16 hours into this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we see these lights come up, 800,000 yards from us. And Dan goes, is that a barge? What is that? I'm like, I don't know. I can't, because it was so dark, you couldn't make out the silhouette of the boat. All you could see was the bow light, you could see the stern light, and you could see, then all of a sudden, red over white over red came on, which is restricted maneuvering.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's a ship. We all kind of probably said it at the same time. I don't know. But you hear some lights moving on the back of the deck, towards the midships just after the superstructure. And then there's a boat coming toward us. It's a motor whale boat with a 4-man crew in it. And they pull up and they go, boy, we're glad to see you. I'm like, you have no idea. We're all pretty weak at this point. I can't hardly even stand up, but they pulled us on board the motor whale boat. And he calls back and he goes, hey, what's the disposition of this raft? And he said, sink it. And it's got radios in it, right?
That was going to be my one question.
Yeah.
You had a radio in the raft. Were you communicating with?
No, we didn't even pull the radio out and use it, because we figured, hey, if they're throwing a raft, they know where we are.
Yeah.
Somebody's coming,
I was curious though.
To be honest with you, my son, Brandon, used to, as I said, was a rescue swimmer for the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
And he said, Dad, he goes, I put those together. I equipped those. I kept those things current. I would switch out those, I packed them and got them ready to go for our unit. And I was like, wow. I said, was there radios in there? He goes, yeah, there was radio in there. I said, I didn't know there was a radio in there. I'm not gonna lie to you. I did not know there was a radio. Had there been a radio, I'd have been calling everybody I could call.
Well, I was thinking, I was like, all right, well, they dropped us off. Now the plane's gone. Well, now what?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So what part of this story is going to happen next? But when the Porter came out and got us in the motor whale boat, and we got on board, they took a knife, and I said, be careful. I'm getting away from this. And he got over there, he pulled out a little folding blade knife, and each section of this, it's like an octagonal raft. Each section is segregated from the next. So if you puncture one, the whole thing stays afloat.
Wonderful.
And I said, why don't you just pull it in? They said, no, we don't have room. Plus, we have to sink it, because if, somebody flying over says, hey, there's a raft in the ocean, then they call the Coast Guard again. It's a cry wolf kind of thing.
Makes sense.
So, yeah, that's why they sank it. So there was two of them. One of them didn't ever inflate, so I don't know what happened to that one.
Yeah.
But I know one thing, there's a scuba tank, bright aluminum. It was Dan's. It's probably somewhere off the coast of, West Africa right now, or wherever the currents go from that point. But
what a feeling.
So glad to be out of the water and then get on the Porter. And it was like the whole crew back there. It was like a welcoming party. And they took us, first they took us to medical. We got out of the wetsuits. They checked us, to see, if there's anything going on. We were just severely dehydrated, and they gave us this drip drops, and we started downing those things. And then they put us in these coveralls. I still have mine. I'm going to keep mine.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I got these coveralls that are like sleeves are this long, past my. I had to roll them up, but it's really cool. I got a picture of Luke and I standing outside Coast Guard Station Oak Island the next morning when Laura came to pick me up, and she took a picture of us, and it's been blasted all over the news because they said, "Hey, do you have any pictures?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got these." And there's a picture of Dan hugging his son on the brow coming up.
I saw the pictures.
Yeah, it's great.
All right, guys, this week's episode is brought to you by Chomps. Chomps is a high-protein, zero-sugar beef stick that I love to keep on board. Two super important things you should always have is water and food. And Chomps really, to me, has been my new favorite, especially their original beef stick. So check them out. They're available online and most of your local grocery stores.
So the Navy transferred you to a Coast Guard boat that took you to Oak Island?
What happened was so after they refueled and came back out, these poor guys, man, they were on the water all day long. Because they went aboard the captain's boat and talked to him like, "Hey, what's the situation with where these guys are?" And so they went when they refueled and came back out. They tried to come alongside the Porter, but they couldn't because of the sea state. It was just going to bang their boat and do damage. So they stood off, and that was this is how flexible the Navy was that night. Amidst all the other stuff going on, they had already recovered their motor whaleboat because they knew that the Coast Guard boat was going to come out and we were going to do a person transfer alongside. They couldn't do it, so they had to put it back in the water.
Oh,
but in the meantime, we're up. We get inside. I need to tell this part of the story because it's not like we're just like, we're rescued, no big deal. It's just like, okay, have you guys notified our families because they're probably losing their mind? So they had a bunch of classified documents in CIC, Combat Information Center, and they couldn't take us up there. So they said, "Give us your next of kin and a number, and we'll go up and call them." So that's what they did. And then Laura can tell you that part of the story.
Yeah, all right, Laura. Yeah.
Well,
let's.
I had a little different experience.
Yeah.
I didn't get the call that he was missing until 7 p.m. So I thought they had found all this lobster and they were cooking it up and having a good old time. And I was pissed. And I had to backtrack on some of the text I sent him earlier. So I got the call from a friend of theirs whose wife happened to have my number. So, it goes back to planning. We have all this technology, but if you don't use it, what good is it? I should have had given my number to the captain, vice versa. So, we had been in contact earlier because I had no clue till 7 p.m. when a friend called. And then Stephen and he called from Coast Guard sector. So, I heard the Lord God say that this is about his testimony. I knew to have a testimony, to be able to speak about this, you got to be alive. Yeah. So I clung to that. And I started calling, there were about 7 different groups of people. First of all, his sons, who one was a former Coast Guard swimmer. The other was a pastor. So I called them first, then family, then Steve, our pastor, then just different groups. But tried to hold it together and be the positive glue in the middle of this, because your mind wants to take you in the craziest directions and visions and all that. But gosh, the Coast Guard is so amazing. And, he called me, he kept in contact throughout the night, but I didn't know until I think it was 2:45 a.m. that they were alive. And so the Navy ship called and she said it really quickly. "We got Ben, he's alive," because you see who it is on the phone and this is 50-50. It's going to go one way or the other. So anyway, I just have such respect for the Coast Guard and the Navy, but really the Coast Guard and how they were so professional about all of this. Just amazing, keeping us informed, realistically informed with what was going on, not, sugarcoating anything.
And we are so lucky to have the Coast Guard. We take that for granted.
I know.
There's so much that goes behind closed doors, and to the boys there, it's just another day in the office.
Yeah. And so we were allowed afterwards to go into their command center You talk about high tech,
Yeah.
special ops. I mean, it is the
it's cool.
coolest
I was
thing
in
to
there.
witness.
Yeah.
So, anybody thinking about going into the Coast Guard, if I had to do it again, I totally 100%.
I think I still might. We just found out the other day that I can go into the reserve or
Wow,
something. We're thinking
yeah.
that'd be a cool.
That would
video.
be-
I
Yeah.
think you are young enough.
Yeah, I am. No,
because they
pushed it
raised the
to 40
age.
something, right? I think it's
Yeah, they did.
I heard it was-
They did raise it.
yeah. So it was funny. We were talking about when I was at Coast Guard Station Oak Island. We were talking like, man, wouldn't it be cool to get the qualified captain to go in the Coast Guard and do a whole video
Yes.
shoot there? But no, if I were to go back and do it again, that is the way to go.
Mhm.
I mean, you can't go wrong in any of them, but really the Coast Guard, there's a lot of different job opportunities.
Sure.
Way more than I ever thought.
Yep.
So
It's a springboard to all kinds of, law enforcement positions if that's what, your chosen path. But yeah, if you like spending time on the water and you want to be, like these guys at Oak Island or any other coastal station.
yeah.
The great thing about the Coast Guard is it's such a small service
Yeah.
that you don't have one person doing one thing. So the opportunities, when you go in and you have multiple interests, you can say,
Mhm.
"Oh, I'm going to do this job, but I want to be a public affairs officer too,"
Yeah.
or "I want to do this job,
Mhm.
but I love search and rescue, so I want to qualify as."
Yeah.
We have a lot of people that hold multiple qualifications
Yeah.
and get
And
to
several
do many
top-notch
things.
women that
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
work
Oh,
at
yeah.
the
And
sector.
I like how it seems kind of flexible too. Like you said, if you want to focus on one thing, you go past that course or that test and move on. I mean, the two gentlemen I spoke with in Oak Island, I think one's 24 and the other one's 20, just right out of high school, and how highly ranked they are already too. I mean,
Yeah.
they're going to do well.
Yeah, they are.
They already are.
I have people who work in the prevention department, which they deal with facilities and shipping and ship inspections and that type thing. And she's breaking in as a SAR mission coordinator, and
Wow.
like
Cool.
people can cross
Yeah.
things because of the services.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
everybody that's listening, I just don't want them to take the Coast Guard for granted, because there's so much they do
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love this part of the Coast Guard story that we didn't find out about until we met them down in Wilmington at the airport, and we met the whole crew. And Laura knows, her dad was in the Coast Guard Reserves. So I said, okay, as soon as I'm able, I want to go down to Oak Island and thank these guys.
Yeah.
So I got the number, called down there, talked to Senior Chief Adkisson.
Yep.
He said, yep, come on down. He said, what, he was afraid that I was going to come down and, put this big demand on. I'm like, no, we just want to come thank you guys. We don't want any formal, if you got the time and you're not, too busy and you're not engaged in any kind of missions, please let me know if it's okay. Sure, come on down. So we went down and thanked them. Went in their conference room. And then we got to meet the crew from the C-130 out of Elizabeth City. Here's the really cool part about that. Not that, the whole thing wasn't cool. It was just awesome. And so everybody at this table, minus you, was in Wilmington at this. And we got to go on board the plane. He said, one of the crew members, and I don't remember the name, but they're in the picture we showed you that he has in his book. They said, when we found you guys, there was this enormous celebration on the plane.
Mm.
He said, because typically we don't find you guys. And when we got back to the dock, and the reason I'm telling you that is because Dan said, hey, how often do you guys do this? And it might have been Carter. He said, well, we do a lot more often than we like to. Well, how often do you usually find the people in the water? He turned and looked at me and said, we typically don't find you. And that was like, as much as everything else was, the vacuum moment, that was the vacuum moment, just sucked the air right out of you. Like, typically we don't find you. And because what that did to me was my mind go to, I had stuff that I was going to do at the house. I was like, God, I got to get home. I got laundry on the floor in the laundry room, it's all this, but when the pilot told us, and he says this on one of the interviews with one of the, news outlets, he says, we were on the last pass of the night. That was their last pass. They saw our light blinking SOS. And he goes, and I alerted the crew, hey, we got him. I think we got him. And sure enough. And I asked him, I said, what happens if you hadn't seen that light? He goes, well, we were going to bank and go back to Elizabeth City because we were getting low on fuel.
Jeez.
Or whatever. And
Wow.
Steve told me correct me if I'm wrong, the next bird that was in the queue to come pick up the search was in Clearwater, Florida. So
Whoa.
3 hours away, right?
We have such limited resources that, for example, people think of, well, just send a helicopter out, right? We have a helicopter at Air Station Elizabeth City that services Sector North Carolina and Sector Virginia. So if they're working a person in the water case in Chesapeake Bay and using a helicopter for that, I have a delayed response here. The C-130 had flown out of Elizabeth City and needed to refuel. And so that was the next available aircraft for us. And the queue was coming up from Clearwater. And their search pattern would have started where Elizabeth City's left off.
Okay.
So they would have continued flying.
Could they have sent out another boat out of maybe the Outer Banks? Or, I mean, I'm just thinking, what are their options besides aircraft?
We have cutters. We have one cutter that services for search and rescue. They can be anywhere from the Virginia border to the Wrightsville Beach, depending on any given day. So we had a cutter en route. I don't remember now how far away they were at the time. I don't think I was thinking they would be on scene until the next day. So we were using C-130s to cover overnight. While that C-130 was searching was while we refueled the boat out of Oak Island and sent them back out so that they would have gotten there when the C-130 was done. So we would always have a boat or a plane on scene overnight, hoping that if you're seeing the lights, that it keeps your hope going, hey, they're looking for us,
Yeah.
So we try to stay there, but you're trying to manage those resources with, okay, if we fly the C-130 for 10 hours, now who's going to show up when they're departing?
Are you communicating with any, civilian vessels that are out there, recreational or commercial fishermen that you might see on AIS that might be nearby?
We do if they're nearby. If they're nearby. We also have the Amber system where
That's right. Yeah.
So any boats that are shipping that's enrolled in Amber will help participate in our search.
I think that's important too for people to understand. Obviously, if you're in the commercial industry out there all the time, but if you're recreational, and you should know what those things mean, because you might be right on the spot.
Very good point. I mean, I had friends down in Carolina Beach, good friend of mine I grew up with too, in Raleigh. He said, man, if I'd have known you're out there, I would have launched at 10 o'clock at night and gone looking for you. People were are willing, I think, not just for us, for anybody. You got friends, family out there, and they can be out looking, they'll do it,
Yeah. And that, and just knowing, what your duty is, what you should do when you hear a pom-pom or something on the radio. Some people don't even know what that means.
Yeah. The thing that's, if we talk about things that can alleviate this situation from, escalating to the point it did is, it's just a good lesson learned from this is to slow down. For me, slow down. If you see something, say something. I mean, I hate to say it, it's such a hackneyed phrase, but it's true. We had EPIRBs on the boat, but in the haste to get in the water, they weren't attached to the gear. So now they're permanently attached to all his gear, he told me. So to me...
Take advantage of the technology.
It does. Take advantage of the technology. The ocean, like I said, the ocean's going to stay there.
And Laura, like you said earlier, I really like the idea. Every time I go out now, hey, whether it's my girlfriend or whoever, hey, we're going here, plan on being back around this time.
Oh, yeah.
Now that I got this in reach, I can text it, hey, heading home. So come up with a game plan. I do it anyways. I write a log the whole time I'm out there, a little book. Yeah. Just because, next year I can look back if we had a good day fishing, all right,
That's a great idea.
tide was this, moon was this.
Sea state, everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just doesn't hurt to keep that in the back of your mind.
That's
and
a great idea.
The water's fun, but it's no joke.
Oh, and it happens fast.
Yeah.
Every story we talk about happens like this, happens like
It
this.
does.
Yeah.
It really does. I mean, Carter Vista is a perfect example, but quickly things can go. And, even though we weren't in dire straits at the very beginning, it became that way as the distance increased between us and the boat,
Guys, I appreciate this and everybody. I think the whole mission of this is to obviously, hear your story, but also educate for the future.
Sure.
It's sometimes it's tough to tell these stories, but
It is. Just, my final thing would be, if you ever find yourself in the situation that I was in, don't give up hope, because fear is cancerous on the water and in that situation. I mean, I've heard of people in similar situations, and one guy just says, I'm heading towards the beach and just take off and swim.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, try not to let that happen. Just stay positive and pray. I'm here for a reason. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what that is, but here we are talking about it. So if one person's life can be saved by slowing down and doing the things that I talked about, then it was worth it.
absolutely.
Absolutely worth it.
Is there any final advice from you guys too, just for anybody listening, especially in the Coast Guard? Just
Communication and position. Like if you have a position locating, a PLB would be great, and having EPIRBs on your boat, having a way to communicate that there is a distress. Lights, dive sausages.
Yeah.
Oh, those are great.
yeah,
Yeah.
And just any way that you can prepare yourself to,
worst case.
make sure you have that flotation, a BC device or something, so you can stay afloat and communicate your position to somebody, because time is our enemy, depending on weather conditions and that type thing. We want to get there and find you as soon as possible.
And stay together. If you're more than one, you got to be.
And make the call.
Yeah. And make the call.
Make the
Absolutely.
And also the support community. Steve called a prayer vigil at our church, and I think 35 people showed up at 9:00. And, just.
Steve, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I was actually down right at Lee Island. It got really dark. It was the whole same night that Ben was out there, so it was really pitch black. And Laura had told me about an hour before that what was going on, and I'm looking out there in the dark of night, going, "My friend is out there. What are we going to do about this?" You want to help your friend. So I got some other friends who have boats. We had all had boats. Well, let's go get them. And then 15 minutes later, we're like, that's really stupid. We shouldn't go get them. We'll be another problem. And, but Ben has a bigger boat. Let's get Ben's boat. And you start going through these ideas, and then you're just going, they're not going to work. And the one thing, I'm not a Coast Guard. I wasn't diving, but the one thing I could do is gather all our friends together and pray for this situation, because, I've heard this story so many times now. And at the end of the story, I sit here and go, 1 in 30 years. I hear this story over and over again. And then I went to the reunion and saw, we prayed for Steve. We didn't know Steve. I didn't know Steve.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know his name was Steve. We prayed for the guy who was calling the shots. We prayed for the crew chief. We prayed for the crew. We prayed for the pilot. We prayed for the guys in the Coast Guard. But we prayed for we prayed. I remember, I think it was me. We prayed that the sharks would not be hungry that night. We prayed that God would shut all the mouths of the sharks and not get close to them, and that sustain them, and they would be actually united, because we have a bunch of guys in our church that are special operator guys, and just being united makes it a lot easier, and being positive, and hey, we're having a positive attitude that we're going to get, just like Ben said, we're going to get rescued. Praying that attitude would continue, and just praying these things for the people that we didn't know. And just, I'll add some things, because I went to Steve's workplace at the sector center. Awesome place again.
Yeah.
And that computer program is absolutely amazing. And when I was there one day, when your dive buddy put in the breadcrumbs, and you started to see, this was the crazy thing, is you started to see that every time the computer had the cone of rescue. I'm not sure what it's called, but this cone of rescue, go search here. They were over here. They weren't in the cone. And the next one was here, and they were out here. And I remember Steve saying, at some point, Steve made the decision instead of this, and you have all these points, statistical points of this is where they should be. Are they laying flat? Are they up and down? Are they together? He finally goes, I think it was Steve. He finally went, all right, we're not going to search there. We're going to search here. And when that happened, this is after the fact. They were already rescued. I'm going, we were praying for Steve to do that. We were praying that Steve would go, because the computer's eventually just a computer.
Yeah.
The computer goes here, and Steve goes, well, we're going to do it here. And it was the last leg. And to listen to the pilot, to that pilot go, and this is the story I remember, he's flying perpendicular to them. He's flying perpendicular to the light. And they're flicking in another story. Your buddy bought 3 $16 lights off of Amazon.
Probably saved his life, huh?
This is what saved his life.
Yeah.
And he goes, I didn't even have them before the stop. And so the pilot sees that beacon, and he turns, and that's when they got the crew in the back. I remember them saying, Is that one head? Oh, we got one. They get closer and they go, 2. We got 2. And then they go, we got 3. And then when they see the 4th head, this heated in the water, they're just in the back, just erupting in celebration because, like Steve said, you just don't find that.
No.
And and just all of those things that the only thing that we could do, because it was a seriously hopeless situation, even though I had hope in the Lord that he would redeem this situation. And I remember after that prayer time, I got home at like 10:30, and again, my house is on the water, and it looks out over Lee Island, and it's pitch black. And I just go, the only way, Lord, that you're going to save this situation is to intervene. And he did that through Steve and the pilot and the crew chief and the crew and the Coast Guardsmen and the Navy vessel and the sharks that weren't hungry and all of those things. And I was so, when I fell asleep that night, like 12:30 right before he got rescued. And I woke up at like 4 a.m. and I got a text from Laura saying that they had been found. And it's still the only answer is the Lord just intervened in the situation. Through these guys.
And all your positive.
They were the means in which he did it. And again, you go to the coast. I know it's like a top secret center or secret center. You can't really go in there, but it really is an amazing thing. You hear the radio chatter. Some guys listen to the radio all the time, and they can just pinpoint. And having all of these systems that we have now, that I left there and I went home and bought me an EPIRB and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I didn't have it. I was really convicted, going, all right, we need to invest some money.
I will say the hardest part of that night for me, when you're working and you're doing math calculations and that stuff's very mechanical, you're well trained in it, Coast Guard's done everything. Finding out that we've located them by a C-130 and dropped a raft doesn't mean that I know that they're all alive. It doesn't mean that I'm wanting to call her so bad and say we found them, but I don't know how to approach that conversation yet, right? So now I'm having to wait. Are they okay?
We can't confirm that until they're on the Navy vessel.
So I'm pacing, and by the time that I did get to call her and say we found them, she had already been notified by the porter. USS Porter had already called her. So when I called her, she says, yeah, I just got off the phone with them.
But we celebrated. We
celebrated.
Together. And now we're friends.
I love how you guys all stay in touch. How can you not?
I know that's exactly it. You have to. I mean, the mission that he does that nobody knows.
Yeah.
We could fill a whole month of episodes of the Qualified Captain about what they do. It's just.
I'd love to learn more.
I tell you.
I mean,
Yeah, you
there's always a different. It's just the story's always different.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
mm-mm.
I think you mentioned earlier the ocean's nothing really kind of take for granted.
No.
And yeah, it's the stories that we've already talked and had people on this show so far. It's been emotional. That doesn't always end positive too. So just keep that in your mind. I mean, this is what 1 out of 30 you guys said something. So
yeah, there's a lot of people out there who've been through similar situations. Like I said, I was asked to go speak to different groups. Went down to, there's a radio show. I'll have to think of it, but
think about it and we can tag them or something later.
Yeah, but they should come down and be our guest and tell us, your story. Did a podcast with, or not a podcast, did a radio interview with them. It was great just to get the word out. Like, hey, this is what you need to do, because we didn't. So yeah, it's been a really awesome opportunity to spread the good news of this.
Yeah.
So,
and a great opportunity. Like I said, I appreciate you guys coming on and doing this. My ultimate mission is to have, that whether you're younger, older, whatever, getting into this sport or a hobby or bought a boat, just listen to these stories though. I'm not trying to scare anybody, tell them not to do it, but there's just technology and ways to make it better. And hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years, we see numbers just lower. Yeah. So that's the ultimate goal.
There's so much out there that can increase your survivability on the water that, it'd be foolish to not use it.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks
Good
for
stuff.
having me.